Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Lifting. Today's episode is being recorded on 10/21/24. We got a special guest again here tonight. Brian Tseng, the Solar Bee, is here with us this evening as we're recording this evening. So we're going to be talking about the 2025 Disclosure Now conference and do a channeling to go along with this. So Joanna, why don't you do the law of one before I forget to do it?
We are all one, and when one is harmed, all are harmed. When one is helped, all are helped. Therefore, in the name of who I am, and I am one with all there is, that only the highest good be done. We pray for you, your friends, your family, your loved ones, to let healing energies in. Let them love you, let them nourish you, and let them bring you to your highest good. We ask for benevolence now to come in with no conflicting agenda, to join us here with this conversation and to support us and those that listen, to be able to listen to this information and bring it in and see if any of it is useful in your own life or in any of the ponderings that you may be having, and that you can take it for what it is and go in peace. So with that and with great, great blessings we send your way, we say, so be it.
So be it. All right. So Brian, I'll just let you get to it. Tell everybody about the 2025 Disclosure Now conference and what people can expect from this time around.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Well, our first conference outing out this recent July was our fledgling conference, and we had less than 7 months to prepare, and yet we had an all-star presenter lineup of 40 plus. That also included workshops, music, special event dinners, which were kind of, I think, my favorite. And a lot of people getting to hang out together on the patio and by the beach, or on the beach and in the water. So we're expecting all of that and more. I'm probably going to feature some panel discussions. I already have a good idea of who we're going to have on, but I still have to solidify and work out the logistics. And I'm kind of dripping out who we're having. This person's presenting and this person will be presenting, but it over time, especially as the bandwidth of our web admin and everybody opens up more, thankfully this time we've got for another 9 months almost, or 10 months from now. Okay. And we've already worked through it great the first time. And part of what happened after the conference I thought was really wonderful. And so many of the presenters, yourselves included, did recap videos of the conference itself, which was amazing. And so it feels like at least triple the people will be attending this next conference. If not, I'd like to go for quadruple. Okay. Also of note is the fact that the conference is held at St. Pete Beach, which got walloped not only by Hurricane Helene, but also then followed by Milton. So I don't know how bad after Milton, but I'd imagine even more sand got washed up into their lobbies and all over their swimming area and first floor there. So we're making it a point to go back there next year. We were already planning to do that anyway, but even more so to support the region. And then on a related note, hurricanes Helene and Milton were, I believe that the hurricanes naturally occurred, but then they were ramped up by geoengineering. And there's a lot of discussion in our community about, hey, let's apply mass quantum entanglement, group prayer, the Maharishi effect, whatever you want to call it, to try to counter the tornado, the hurricane Milton, because Helene took us all by surprise. For Milton, round 2, and according to, I believe it was Sasquatch, the forest people, they said we took it down from a 5 to a 3 by collectively working together.
Mm-hmm. And it was basically fighting against everybody because of the fact that there was a program running within it to keep regenerating it over and over again. Even Joanna looked inside of it and saw little faces inside of there. Even a couple friends of mine in Nebraska looked inside of there and saw the same thing, like there were these beings in it. And another one that lived in Florida actually saw a spaceship sitting in the center of it at one point, basically fueling off of it, trying to basically get some of that collective energy off of it. So there was a lot of things going on there at the same time to regenerate that storm. So taking it down to a 3 was actually more of a monumental accomplishment, more of one than people think it was, because they brought
Wow.
5 because it was pushing this way so much. Normally a regular one without the weather enhancements on it, you'd be able to dissipate that no problem with just reversing the vortex. But one with the weather control really inserted and aliens screwing around with it, that's impressive that they took it down 2 notches from where it was. Given all that was, it was an uphill battle from the start. So
Did
yeah.
any did I gotta ask, did any of that machinery get fried out by the masses of people collectively saying we don't consent and we don't want this equipment to be ramping up Mother Nature against us all?
Oh, I feel it was, even though they've had backups, I felt like something, normally you can feel if something's messing with the ether somewhere. And they also use 0 point modules and stuff for their power supplies and such. Or from the storms themselves, they'll take some of the energy to refuel it. What happened was did feel something pop like a bubble somewhere. So I feel like something got burned out as a result. Usually
Oh, good.
when you're feeling the ether, it's like what Obi-Wan said in the first Star Wars movie, New Hope, where he said, thousand voices cried out and then were gone. Essentially when Alderaan blew up, it's this exact same effect as what he was saying. When something changes, you feel like a disturbance in the force, essentially, and
Hmm.
because if you're that connected, and you just feel like something just winks out all of a sudden. And I know damn well something got burned out.
Oh,
So
good. It was something bad got burned out in this
something
case.
bad got burned out. I want to specify that. Yes.
Yeah.
Uh,
And then I think you're saying in one of your other podcasts, episodes here, that the reason why there are so many of the mini tornadoes that were so fierce and concentrated, where they were part of the larger mass, but when the larger mass got broken down, these might have been, perhaps in this case, those entities occupying or running their own little smaller tornadoes that got broken off.
I saw the same effect in Nebraska years ago, where they had a larger tornado. It actually was the largest on record. It was an F6 that formed in a tornado in Nebraska that literally wiped out a whole town. But in the process, there were people picking it apart, and it went apart. And my mother and I saw some intelligences within the little tornadoes as well. Not knowing too much about weather control at that time. This was back in the early 90s we saw this. And also, we saw these little tornadoes come together and form the big one originally. And we were like, okay, so there's an intelligent hand behind this one.
Hmm.
We looked into it at the time and found the exact same thing we found with Helene and Milton. So it was the same identical thing, more so with Milton this time. But
And I think when you mean you're seeing things, like looking at it and seeing faces, seeing things going on, it's more of picking up on things that are behind the scenes in the contributory factor of trying to make things worse. So I mean, when people are trying to understand,
consciousness is behind it.
yeah, when people are trying to understand what am I seeing, and I do believe that there are basically others' involvements, let's say, that's what those faces and seeing different things like this would represent, the player behind the scene.
What did those faces look like?
Well, for me, I have to say, my brain is pretty funky, I think, because I think for me, personally, I do not like to be threatened in a sense. So faces for me can look a little cartoonish, so that when I'm looking at them, I'm not scared of it. Do you understand what I'm saying? But
Because you're essentially using your third eye perception, and then so you can
yes.
filter if you want to.
Yes, and
That's
so
what-
you can do that for yourself. You literally can, what I mean? What can I handle? And, if I want to be curious, how far is my own personal limitation? So, I would say that, I have to say that there was non-human involvement as well as human involvement.
So they're nasty beings.
Excuse me?
And so some of them were nastier beings.
I think, it's kind of an interesting, I don't even know really how to explain that other than to say conflicting agendas. So, because, there are people, humans, who don't equate themselves as being equal to us surface dwellers, let's say. You know what I mean? They look just like us. They're part of the human race, but they don't think they're just like us.
The so-called wannabe elites.
Yeah, those type of persons, I think
Mhm.
you have alien races that do not look at life, the world, how things work in a similar way than we do. So what they would consider evil is not the same thing we would consider evil because
Sure.
we have a different perspective of things. So it's a lot of things are all about, perspective. And if you're trying to run an agenda to go in this direction, there can be collateral damage that to us would be evil. Versus for somebody else, it's a necessary to move society along. Do you see what I mean?
Oh yeah, yeah. And then depending on their agenda, and then how good is it for our society, for us or them,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So that's the hard thing about it, when we talk about good or evil, it ends up always being about a perspective. It's like, if I got a hold of one of them and I, was able to end their lives, from my perspective, I did something good, but from another's perspective, I didn't do something good, right?
True. Right.
So, it's all about that perspective. So I think for me, looking at some of this, I oftentimes want to know the strategy and who are the players. Who are the players and what are the strategies? So I think I can easily say that there are those non-human looking that could be still colonized on this earth, that many people don't know that they're living here, that may be working with elitists or military. What bothers me probably more is to know that there's military involvement in some of these agendas that are also, not there to defend the citizens. Not all like that.
I mean, if I may, because on the one hand, you've got these faces that of these entities. Some of them are non-human that are kind of like you're getting the psychic impressions of them pushing the storm. But then we literally have these Nexrad installations blanketing our land, run by presumably the military or who else, zapping the atmosphere. At the same time, you've got these beings and entities doing their thing that you're
Right.
perceiving
And
Mhm.
with
not all
others.
of them know what they're doing. I will say that not all of them actively are participating in something that is nefarious from our perspective. And there's something else that what we were told, especially about military installations, is just like we think about the V2K and different things that are the psionic dampening that's being done to regular humans. On military installations, there is a dampening to the personnel. So they themselves are getting extra special, lulled into participating. We oftentimes only think about that as it relates to people and their experiences in, let's say, the secret space program. But that concept of how do I get compliance, even especially from military and military personnel, is done on the military bases and facilities here to them. And
That makes perfect sense.
yeah, and I would bet you that there are plenty of the hierarchies, right, who feel that they've been privy to everything, that would sit here and call me a liar for saying that, because they aren't privy to absolutely everything. But, and then you do have those at a different level that they are in agreement with the agenda. The bad news is that oftentimes, because you don't have the coherent different factions of the cabal, they're not all in alignment and in agreement. Now, they may have some things that they are all in alignment with, like, for example, we want to stay in control, right? So that goes across the board. But how you do it and how you treat humanity isn't necessarily in alignment with all of them. They literally fight one another, and we are just caught in the middle. And so some of that, literally, when you think about, some of those dynamics, it is literally a part of that. one faction giving a middle finger to another faction and the fighting and
But
that's going on there.
I've got an example. Someone was asking me the other day, are the deep underground military bases being cleaned out or not? Because there are some people in the community saying, "Oh, all the bad reptilians and all the bad ETs, they're gone. It's only the friendly ETs flying the friendly skies. Don't worry, people." And then other people are like, "No, I don't see any evidence of like underground bases being cleaned out. There's no such thing as a white hats, blah blah blah." I seem to think it's somewhere more in the middle of there, and that these underground bases, for example, one day they might be controlled by bad guys or one faction of bad guys, and then another, perhaps, hopefully, the white hats might sweep in and take control of that underground base. And one of my favorite proofs of this is there was a while, and if you follow zetatalk.com, and I don't agree with a lot of what they say, and they really downplayed like the scamdemic and all that, but the bioweapons, but they have a lot of great data, for example, like showing what look like earthquake maps showing like but they're picking up really instead of earthquakes, looks like explosions that are all in like lines, like 1,000 mile like stretch, and they're like blowing up at like 10 kilometers average depth along like 1,000 mile stretch in perfectly straight lines. And that to me would indicate underground tunnels perhaps being kablooied. Do you have any feedback on that?
Oh yeah. I've heard that very same thing. Like some things were being collapsed. I know what you're talking about all the explosions like that, and some of the underwater explosions too were very very similar. Like we were witness to one of those back in 2016, I believe. Yeah, I believe it was at Ocracoke Island or the Outer Banks.
No, it was literally
Outer
the
Banks.
Outer Banks.
Oh,
It
the Outer
was the
Banks,
most amazing thing that actually happened to us. So in the Outer Banks, I hope people get a chance to go there sometime. Again, when you get there on the beach, there's no artificial lighting. So at night, when you're walking the
Pitch
beach,
black.
you're walking a dark beach, right? Because they really do that. And we like to, because Chris uses them in some of his work, we like to collect seashells or whatever. So we'll go down to the beaches to try and do that. And we were just happened to be out walking that one night, and I still can't believe it. We heard a boom off in the distance in the waterway. We heard a boom. And, there's a lot of military, there's a lot of stuff around. We didn't give much thought to it. A few minutes later, so you got to remember, this is pitch black, okay? We see all the stars. These waves roll up that are on burning fire red.
The water was burning as
The
it was
water,
coming up.
like a fire was washing up on shore, but it was encapsulated in the water,
was
and
rolling.
it was, like a fire would be bright. It just was, and
You could feel it too as it was coming up. So
it was
Oh,
an
wow.
amazing thing that, we had seen, and then, we had received the information that there is warring going on between the military and the Myrmidon right now. And obviously we were seeing the tech, you know what I mean? We were seeing.
Was that them blowing up the Myrmidon?
Oh, it was actually them just firing things at one another. Myrmidon actually they aren't weak at all. So if anything the military throws at them, they're just like meh.
What's their tech like? They're not just when you say Myrmidon, I was thinking like mermaid people.
Oh yeah, mermaid. It's just like you see in the movie Aquaman and Aquaman: The Lost Kingdom. It's the same identical type of scenario that you actually see there. That when they showed all the like the battling underwater, then you have the news reporters saying all the explosions under the ocean and the seismic activity. They were hinting at that's what was actually going on under the ocean. It was so not quite to that Hollywood fanciful level, but
Right.
it's more like. But somebody was pointing out the exact things that were going on.
It's a shooting war down there.
The shooting
and that
war.
was
Yeah,
that was blown.
Pull your candle up, because it was kind of that color, the red one, the one that's going the candle.
Oh, the orange one, yeah.
Yeah. So if you can imagine, it just blows your mind. You're watching a wave.
Yeah, it was this color.
If you can see the orangey.
Yeah.
If you can imagine, literally encompassed in a wave, and water was fire in it. It was the most It was the most surreal thing, to be able to.
Now-
And you could feel
witness.
heat coming off.
Now I got to ask: was your presence there heightening the situation, or would it have happened with or without you two
I
walking
think it was
along the
happening
beach?
with or without us, but
Okay.
I think sometimes I call us we bumble. It's like we seem to bumble.
we were supposed to see that
be at the
stuff.
I see.
witness something to be able to talk about it at times, I think.
Mhm.
And it was still one of the most amazing things that I'm still, my mind's blown about it, because I'm like, how does that occur?
Yeah.
How is that, how does that, but anyway, but a lot of that stuff happens, and we've tried to say, I guess from our perspective, is it getting worse or getting better? The powers that be that are a bit more nefarious and wanting to control a dialogue and agenda, they have not stopped. So in those sense, what they try to do is recreate themselves. They will become the, arsonist who sets the fire so they can save the day.
They're ramping up the chaos.
They are, and then they'll come in and try to be a savior to it in one way or another. That has not changed, and that's been going on for thousands and thousands of years. What is starting to have an effect and change is as people are finally pulling back the curtain and seeing things and questioning things, right, or the world around them, and no, they don't seem to have our best interests. No, did they just make a lot of people sick with what they just did? Is there a culling going on? When people now are starting, to question and see these things, what's starting to change is people saying, I don't want this. And so becoming aware, saying this is not the life that I want to lead, that I want to see passed down through the generations. And so in a sense, that collective energies, like we said about the hurricane, the collective energies are also allowing for an impact. Plus, there were agreements made. We talk about, the Galactic Federation or whatever. Well, there are still agreements that have been made for millennia, long time, that, are having to be honored, and even the nefarious are trying to tiptoe their ways around it. Groups are arguing about it.
No, when you talk about agreements, Joanna, are you talking about, if I'm in the agreements, are you talking about like a changing over of the guard and for the
Well,
alpha?
there's agreements with our government. Basically, what happens is, and Lonulus is a good example of this as well, where like aspects of their provincial government and aspects of our shadow government made agreements for either personnel exchange or to basically maybe have some people live on one side or the other for a certain amount of time, like over on Lonulus, for instance. The Lonulosian government won't always grant asylum to some of our people if they work for any of these
Now I have to ask, like, it's one thing I thought it was difficult for either the Lanosians to come from their next door realm to ours and then vice versa for long periods of time. But then there are people who are able to, I guess, achieve the right vibration to be able to like permanently cross over.
Yeah, Injured Cold's one of those because I came to find out, and I did come to find out more. And I will say this, because we did a GIC episode called "A Man, the Man Known as Cold," and what he ended up telling us, and he's going to come back probably for dozens of them, but this is just one aspect of this where he called the other opening of like a dimension an aperture. What is that? That's also a planet. He told me that in a different frequency, yes, like with Asgard before it became the asteroid belt, yes, there is a planetary body, but it's also there's a dimensional space, you see. Right. So he did say, yes, there is an area outside the solar system where they are as well. He told me the reason he told everybody that it was just a planet is because humans wouldn't have understood the dimensional physics of it.
I still have a hard time wrapping my head around this.
Yeah, me too. I'm looking at it,
right?
Okay, you're in two places at once. What's going on? Yeah, so.
But some of these long-standing agreements, so again, why we feel so strongly that galactic history is so important and how it affects us now, is that if you can just wrap your mind around the fact that Earth was a colonization of different races,
Mhm.
that came in. We talk about, the forest people, the Sasquatch. They were spacefaring. They came in and colonized here. You've got the ancient Mayans. They came in. You got the Umtumban, the ones that are more the Asian look behind them, the Umtumban. They colonized here. Again, the goal was, could you create a place where people could get along? But again, they had to come in and they had to terraform. They had to potentially wear technology. It was their descendants that got more and more used to be able to balance out. But these races are still connected to in a sense, to their descendants. They have a stake here.
And
So
that's why we're getting the ships flying over and monitoring their starseed incarnations. It's like there are people in our community like, yeah, I've got a mothership assigned to me. It's like, anytime they want, they can go outside, point a camera out, they'll have this like blinky giant
That
ball falling.
happens.
but when we're talking about what we were saying before, who's advocating, right? Who's advocating at the Galactic Federation and these agreement levels, are a lot of those races still advocating, as they have been doing since the very beginning, that this fledgling colonization, right, has rights and deserves certain things. And so it's an interesting conversation because most of the time when you hear about this one world government and you hear about these different things, most of the time people again are assuming only humans are here, but humans are not the only ones that are here. So you've got a lot of advocating being done on behalf of the original intent that was benevolent, like the first original benevolent charter, let's say, of the people trying in and coming to do that, and races that are advocating for that as well. So it's, when you just think it's only humans, right? You think you can make it all work and force a forced unity. You can't even do that with regular humans, but we're talking way more than just regular humans. And so you have a lot of it. What helps is, again, where we say we're the ones we've been waiting for, the understanding of the big picture, to understand how important you are and how do you co-create what you want, right? And those energies then can coalesce with other people co-creating. But right now, as we've said many, many times, what people have in general learned is how to not co-create well,
Right.
and how to co-create for someone else. But to expand people's minds a little bit, it's way more than just humans. It's way more. And that's where we talk about the storyline, the agenda. So if you can convince everybody that there's nothing other than humans, right? And you can convince everybody that you're the heir apparent, right? And you can rewrite history, and you can ignore all of this stuff and tear whatever you want to tear down so that you can rewrite history again. And you can do all of this. The goal is to control the dialogue in order to present it in a way to get people to still co-create for
Right.
another's
They
agenda.
they're buying our consent without saying, "Hey, kids, we want your consent." They're just kind of giving us the funhouse maze that kind of funnels us
Right.
and keeps us funneled, right? And then when now we talk about these
And that's
groups,
part
okay,
of these stories, though. So to get back to what we were originally saying, where you're like, people are saying this, people are saying it's ending, people are saying this. Some of those are still a part of those storyline creations.
The narratives.
The
Yeah.
narrative that people want you to believe. The best thing, as they said, the devil did is making people think he wasn't real. It's kind of that. So some of these things that, we try to tease out, and I know a lot of people, again, who wouldn't want all of this stuff to be ending, right? But that's really just now some of it is just a regurgitation of tactics that have been used for, tens of thousands of years. And,
Joanna, are referring to like false light promises, like everyone sit back, you don't have to do anything, trust the
Yes.
plan. And it's kind of like on the one hand, I do trust that there is a plan, but then I'm also going to do everything I can in my own power, wherever I am, to make that plan happen.
well, it has to be that way.
It has to be that way. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
there is truth in that, because
Yeah.
we are greater souls. We do have greater understanding of things, you know what I mean? And we've circled the toilet so much, now's the time to create a unity that we haven't had that kind of positive experience, right? Because we went down the toilet first. So the negativity has to grasp onto something that is real, that aids in our confusion, and then they can spin a story that we want to grab a hold of. So it's going to have to do something that's not quite just all BS. It's going to be based off of our heart and souls knowing certain things. Do you see what I mean? And then
That's a spiritual evolution, and our elevating our vibrations towards higher frequencies and truth and all of that. Now we're capable. Now they can not violate the prime directive and make contact with us. And then, this begs the question for me: is the they? Are you familiar with the galactic court system, and do you interact with that at all?
I have very rarely. There was a client of mine about 4 or 5 years ago that had introduced me to some of that because he kept having dreams where people were trying him in a galactic court of law for breaking some law or something like that, and the same dreams kept happening over and over again. He was getting SSP memories back. But what was actually happening is some of the people that participate in the secret space program were grabbed also by members of some of the good factions of the Galactic Federation and went, hey, wait a minute, you're guilty of this. But at the same time, the bad guys here in the SSP wanted him to only remember those nightmare sequences where he was being accused. They actually let him go, citing that it was his bosses that actually did the thing to him. So what our government, as punishment for making allies out there, they let him only remember the fact he was being guilted. So and it was on record skip. Now, when I had that confirmed, yeah, I know there are different councils, different court levels. Like we have, like if you saw the movie Jupiter Ascending, whereas you saw the bureaucracy taking place in that, or Harry Potter, where you see all the levels of bureaucracy. It's like that. It's basically like some bureaucratic office that you go to here waiting on like a stamp for something or waiting on a approval for something like that, or the court system like our Supreme Court or some of the lower courts and everything. It's as above, so below. It's very similar, but just it's our system, but on acid pretty much, because it's like it's basically extremely convoluted, extremely bureaucratic, and think of like our Congress times 1,000 when it comes to the Galactic Senate. So it's they're all every now and then, or mix that Parliament into that. So
And they show that in the film. They definitely show that in Jupiter Ascending. The whole process of getting genetically identified or whatever look like, yeah.
That's pretty much accurate, yeah.
One of the mythos, I'm going to use that word, that is out there right now, even regarding the Galactic Federation, is that because of what could be coming down the pike, they first have to get people to buy into the fact that, of course, they are there for your highest good.
Right. Or because they're higher beings or somehow, and what we'd say, just because they're at a higher level, but there's baddies at higher levels too, and just because they're at a higher level doesn't mean that they're higher. They're more bad. They're more
right.
power.
Or they're just again, it's kind of one of those things. They don't have the same value system, and so you know what I mean. So is some of this really for our highest good? And and so I guess I would put it this way. We are unique here. This is a unique situation on this planet with different people, with human beings, with a full range of emotions. You do not see a lot of that out there. So when these federations were first made up, the vastness of what could be on a planet was not there. And so this is like, taking a square peg Earth and trying to fit it in a round hole of their mold that they have always been able to have, but we're so different. So
and because we're so far down the line, this is like the grand experiment, right? And it's morphed and it's become more than they ever thought. and then there's always conflicting agendas, and then there's a bureaucracy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so the question is, again, if you can really tease it apart, is why are we the only ones that have to change? Why aren't you changing?
Well,
Why aren't
actually, I was
you
gonna,
up?
you know how you just mentioned, Joanna, that most of the galaxies are not as emotional and they don't have the same range. And I guess isn't that part of what they desire from humanity and they're afraid of is our level, our emotional range. But a lot of these races, like if they're like feeling emotion, like they've been on maybe like what do you call it, Prozac this whole for a couple of thousand years, maybe they're trying to like use us to get their mojo back somehow.
Yeah, there are some races that are like that. Majority of them are not. It's like Star Trek, where you just see the different races,
Hmm.
like the way they are. Now, where it is like that is races like the Ebens, like with the planet Serpo nonsense, and
Yeah.
and
Well,
then
we
you
don't say
have
nonsense. Is that nonsense or not? Because
there are some aspects that are nonsense. They make them okay. They make them look really kind and benevolent, like humans are playing soccer with them and all this other stuff. It's like, no, that didn't happen. I'm telling you right now, that
no,
did not
they're getting
happen.
chopped up and then having cloning done to the bodies of the humans that didn't make it over there.
And
Yep.
having certain aspects that they did not deem desirable, like a wide range of emotions, taken out of the genetic coding. So this is what you have to understand. And when people are talking about hybrids and all of this stuff, people are focusing on, oh, they'll be smarter, they'll be more, but they'll also have things taken away.
Depends on what that race or species, what their purpose is. Because I would have thought, oh, great, the Serpo grays, they might have taken their human specimens to try to rekindle and enhance their emotional matrix, and you're like, no, they probably wanted other stuff like taller, stronger, hardier, whatever, faster, but that
Right.
doesn't necessarily mean more
Or
emotionally
reproductive skills that were
Or that they've
lost as
lost.
well.
Yeah.
So I mean,
right.
so I think what
Right.
it is that what people don't really understand right now is the importance. Where we joke about it, and we say, you need to look at yourself, but we also need to look at ourselves as who are we as a race and value that. It's one thing, if I came over and punched you in the nose out of nowhere, I hope there would be a moment you would be mad. You may even for a second wish I were dead if it was really hurting, right? But you would be the calm person of trying to calm it down. And when you put your foot forward and said something, it would most likely again be representative of you. But you would have had the whole swing full of emotions, right?
Hmm.
Leading up to the moment of who am I and how am I now going to present myself in this situation. What that is normal, and that's a part of what humans do. The other thing about what humans do with all that emotion is that they use it to energize whatever they're creating. And so that passion, for whatever the reason is, it could be I'm creating something that's going to be really beneficial, but I'm very mad the whole time I'm doing it because I'm mad at what happened to my family member, right? So there's a lot of things done within all those emotions that make humans what they do. And one of the great things that humans do, I always think of the 3M company. We didn't create it, but we made it better, right?
Right.
How could we use it? How could we do? That's something that humans have a lot of, that you can see now. Even the school systems trying to kill that type of ingenuity in students. So and make them little emotionless
But so like what you're saying is in the case of like a human, like you punch us in the nose, we're going to react one way or another. And a lot of times you don't actually know how we're going to react. Like a Serpo Gray, you punch them in the nose and what? They're just like automatically running away to try to get a mob to like take you down. Like it were,
It depends on the gray because there are some that will just do nothing. Some that will react violently, like the Orion grays, and then you have the evens. Yeah, they would just say do that again, and I'm taking you to the ground, kind of thing. And then you have
but couldn't even take a human to the ground?
Oh, yeah, the bigger security ones you could. Now the
Oh,
short,
really?
there's these
Because I'm
big,
thinking like Skinny Bob. Like, what's Skinny Bob gonna do to me?
well,
You
the
know,
skinny
like maybe
Bob also,
psionically knock me on my butt, make me poop myself, but like
but
he's not going to like left hook me, is he? You
oh
know?
no, what they do is they'll just flip you and take you down. They don't have the muscle. They use like some kind of tech, and they just and they pancake you on the ground. So
Oh, they
yeah,
use tech though, but they have tech.
yeah, they use tech like a psionically based tech on their hands. They can just move
But
you
if
through
it's,
that. Yeah,
again, sometimes they are more robotic and those are very strong. Don't
and
let
some of
those
those are
fool
very
you.
strong though. The
Don't,
robots. Yeah,
don't let the
Oh,
robots fool you.
yeah.
They're
okay. Don't let them
very
fool
strong.
you. Yeah.
I tried to tackle one time, a big 8 footer, and I got my ass handed to me.
But what I
So
Okay.
mean is that you would be
Okay.
taken, so let's say a galactic hits you in the nose or whatever, and you had that full range of emotion. You would be taken to court now, even though you didn't do anything. You'd be taken to court for attempted murder because they read your thoughts and you had a murderous moment. Do you see what I mean? So you've
you'd still
got,
be going through the court system as to what the nature of the
They'd
thought was.
audit. There's an auditing process because when you have telepathy involved, things get so much touchier. So
right. And
Like in Star Trek Voyager, where you had the species that was telepathically sensitive, and they accused B'Elanna Torres of harboring an angry thought that injured them in some fashion. And it's like, no, she's a Klingon. They do this. You know, that's
right,
a culture. You
it's
know,
that's what I mean. Both sides have to grow because, come on, grow a pair. What if he didn't do anything? And again, whereas my feelings are, who gave you the right to feel you can read everybody's thoughts? Where is any sense of privacy? Because we would go out there and demand some sort of privacy. We would say, you develop your tech, you probably already have it, so that you can tone it down and not be so sensitive. Right. So we would be demanding that our culture and who we are not be genetically gotten rid of. Right. We would expect, and now would we also learn as we learn and grow to be able to find, as we say, that center space, that analem space, that calm space, knowing that you're dealing with somebody sensitive. Most of us kind human beings would want to present ourselves in that space to that one to show respect for who they are. We're just saying we should be having the same respect. But right now, what we've been seeing is that's actually not the model. And, so a lot of stardust being thrown around, a lot of, all of this stuff. And it's really not necessarily the truth because they have such a long history and who they've been basically wanting to come in. We do not fit that mold at this time. And why should we have to completely fit that mold? Why? We shouldn't have to. Why can't you
let
more
me ask.
accept us?
My understanding of that greater exopolitical situation is that accordingly, it's like the Farsight Institute and others, I believe, like Elizabeth April, um, just kind of like a militaristic stalemate between, I guess would be is it the Draco reptilians and Orion Greys on the one side, really,
mhm.
against more like the Galactic Federation types. And then the big part of the problem is that the Earth isn't even part of the Galactic Federation. We're not a charter member. And then there's always other planets that are part of the Galactic Federation where their worlds are under attack and getting messed with by the Dracos. And so they're like, well, why are you helping the humans over there on Earth? They're not even signed up. And others are saying, well, what happens on Earth to humanity is actually really important to the rest of us.
Oh yeah, there's also another angle to this where it would also at the moment would not behoove us to become part of the Galactic Federation at all because you have aspects of their council that are more fascist. They would demand that we would conform to how we would have to structure our government. We want one ruler to be able to sit on the Galactic Senate, say. So, and Earth does not operate that way.
Right.
We're multicultural and it has to be treated differently. But you have the cabal that wants to be the one ring to rule them all, pretty much, or also the Martian Germans, to be more accurate. And what happens is they're trying to, all the chaos you're seeing, is they're trying to basically, think about when you're trying to apply for a credit card or an insurance policy or a loan or something like that, and you want to meet the minimum requirement. They're trying to get everything up to the minimum requirements so they can go to the Galactic Senate and go
Ram it through.
ram it through.
I've got the golden ticket. I've got the golden ticket.
Yeah,
It's
that's
me. It's
exactly
me.
what
I
they're trying to
represent.
do.
We
Yeah.
represent Earth. Z. They're going to eat Z bugs now.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how it is. Think of also like a lot of the DEI stuff you're hearing about, a lot of this other stuff. Where do you think it comes from? Out there. So, and I'm not saying every single aspect of the GF is like that. That's asinine. I'm just saying that the cult faction of it that we're dealing with does believe that. So, and that's also made up of some of the ones we call princes of the universe, or the part reptilian, part Pleiadian ones that I was talking about in the other show we were doing.
I thought those were renegades, so they weren't part of the Galactic Federation.
Well,
but
they are
are.
allowed to do what they're doing. It's another faction or council, but they're kind of like the GF is kind of like, yeah, okay, let them do their thing, kind of thing. So
Or
yeah,
how do we stop them? They're a rogue faction with their own civilization now. What are we going to do?
yeah,
They're
they're
Pleiadians who
basically.
hybridize with the Draco. Like
Mhm.
you stop them.
Yeah, if you guys stop them, cool. That's kind of how it is, and they're essentially they're the Aldebaran Nordics. Essentially, they're in the constellation Taurus, and those are the
Okay,
ones
so
that.
Aldebaran Nordics are really renegade Palladians who are hybridized with Draco.
Yeah, that's
So that's
essentially it. Yeah, and I call them Orion Phase 3 because you have the Orion Greys, you have the elongated skull ones that they created like Akhenaten, then you have the third Phase 3, which are the hybridized Pleiadian Draco types. That I call them pretty boys. So yeah,
And they do part of
they look
their,
photoshopped actually.
some of
Yeah.
their nature, no matter how pretty they look, they do want it. It is in their nature to want to dominate and control, and they will do it with chaos. So, I mean, I think again, people are having a really hard time really understanding, what's out there. And again, it's natural again because of the thought of a higher source, a higher power, gods in different religions that have, more tech, more knowledge. Like you were saying before, that somehow benevolence comes along with that, right? And it's actually just not true. And so,
bureaucracy came along with it.
Yeah,
right, bureaucracy,
red tape.
and
Yeah.
again, not getting along, or again, even in a organic unity, what are the threads that they do agree upon, and ignoring the rest? Do you see what I mean? So it's not, even the Galactic Federation, there are agreements and trade agreements and this, that, and the other, but is there this overarching that they all agree about it? Absolutely not. And so people need to understand these things so that, no, we all don't want to look the same. Do we want that for our descendants and everything? Do we want everyone to only have this range of emotions? Do we really want? But right now, what happens, unfortunately, is that chaos can be thrust down into a society in such a level that you'll agree to anything to make the pain stop, right? And
Well, I gotta ask: is this a lot of these Mars Germans, for example, who are they're trying to force this? And then I gotta ask, as it seems like the other side is losing their grip down here on Earth, is a similar thing happening up there in space and in the breakaway colonies, or
Well,
what
yeah,
is the
you see.
scenario there?
You see, like, yeah, it's the Martian Germans here. Yes, they're one of the main bad guys here. You have some of the Satanic Cabal, and then you have all these other little military factions with different banners and such out there as well. White Hat. Then you have some that are just out for themselves, things of that nature. They might hate the Martian Germans, but they don't like the people, kind of thing. You have that kind of dynamic going on. And then it's an as above, so below. You have other factions out there in space that for lack of a better term, I just call them pirates because you have some space pirates, salvager types out there that may trade with the Galactic Federation. You have other people that are member worlds that want to see the laws change because there was an agreement signed with the Orions quite some time ago that they would have a seat on the council. But then, of course, the overall government would still be in charge, the planets would still be in charge. But then the Orions put a little stipulation in there going, okay, leave Earth alone for a little while. We'll handle this. This is basically in our purview for the moment.
No one say the Orions, are these Orion Grays or these Dracos? Or are they
A
both?
little of both, actually.
Because Orion is it like an Orion Empire, and then is Orion Empire still there, or is it broken up, or
It's
is it in?
broken up. It used to be an empire, but after the last Great War that took place, they didn't get they had their asses handed to them, but at the same time, the good side also lost. So yeah, parts of the good side lost too.
It was like attrition. It was like nasty.
Attrition. Yeah, it was extremely nasty. That was the last end of it was about 500,000 years or so years ago, and then some of the species here, they tried to annihilate them further on in time, and then the wars still continue. That's why you have the Mahabharata, where you see them warring even here. The
And
war.
is this involving like they've captured some of each other's side souls and they're being held to this day?
Oh yeah, this has happened. That's where you get the whole story of the Screaming Souls of Maldek story. Is where when Asgard exploded, you had a lot of these energies flying around that were being captured, and some souls are still swimming around in the ether from that time frame. That's where you get that. That's where you get that information from. So
Wow. Okay.
yeah, and also the contract that was signed. I said this at the conference where you see this scene in Star Trek Discovery where you see an admiral in Starfleet Vance, and then you see Osira, the Emerald Chain, signing a contract in that, or they were trying to sign a contract. And then Vance actually withdrew and said, no, you have to step down, have somebody impartial take your place on the Federation Council, and we'll be glad to make a deal with you. The real thing that took place, that was a real historical event they were depicting in that. Also, you can equate it in Skyrim to the White Gold Concordat they signed, that the Empire signed with the elves in it. It's the same thing where they denied Talos worship. Essentially, Earth is no touch, or the Sigic Order telling the Daedric Lords in Skyrim or in Elder Scrolls, no, you can't manifest on Mundus because you need to let this society do this, and that. It's essentially telling the same
They
story.
they want they want the grand experiment to develop organically. They don't want anyone to upset the terrarium.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the reason in Elder Scrolls you had the Sigic Order step in until the Daedric Lords stopped doing this. Is you had one called Molag Bal that came in and destroyed a whole village. He goes, I can do what I want, and then all the other Daedric Lords went, what are you doing, man? And Sigic Order steps in and goes, nope, we're going to have to call you all to task now and create this treaty that if you do this again, we're going to cream you. So now you have these lucid, like kind of loose treaties between all the Galactic Federation worlds. Like if one comes here and does something, another member world can step in and try to stop that no matter how good that intention is. And then you have like if one is brave enough to be the wildebeest across the stream, then you have three other member worlds showing up here going, wait a minute, they just introduced themselves to the public. Now we can do this, let's match the treaty.
And this is kind of like everyone's still waiting for the starting gun.
Yeah, exactly. They're all sitting there going, eh.
Well, it's
Yeah,
kind of
so
funny you say that all along while people are being prepped already to accept the story that's been approved with the agenda going on with it. So I know again, people will say that they've had their experiences with even some of the things that you were saying about being prepped to be something, right? A part of you doing this over here. But, the question has always got to be, what was that agenda? What was that agenda? And what I'm being told was I taken into a kind of a school environment and told this was a factual, this is the way it is, because they want it to be.
Right. Was I fed this false agenda? Or like, are they hybridizing with my children that they're taking away at like 4 months old in like, the womb because like they want to help humanity? Or is it they really want to make their own hybrid race to help kind of sort of replace humanity, blend in
Right,
with
to
us?
go along with the agenda of what they envision the type of humans they wish to deal with. And so,
Right. It's like that Gene Roddenberry's Earth 2.0 or whatever.
oh yeah, Earth Final Conflict,
Yeah,
where
that one. Yeah.
the aliens make themselves look godly, and they're really doing experiments on people in the background even before they introduce themselves to humanity.
And that's basically real.
Yeah, that's basically one way that but they show one race and that are two races, but that is essentially correct how he wrote it. Yeah.
Yep.
Uh,
So we don't deny, the one thing that we try to say, this is why, again, why we often say, kind of we're like this. We don't like to name drop. We don't like to talk about people. We don't like to
Okay.
do that. It's not about the people. It's about the what's being done. It's about the bigger picture story, because very good people have been abducted all their life and been prepared to say a narrative, not a truth, but a narrative, and to promote a narrative, an agenda that maybe if they actually knew what really the big picture was, they wouldn't have agreed to. But when you are prepped and primed for that, people will tend to do it. And they could
Groomed.
have been told
Yeah.
groomed, and they could have been told a story that is for the most wonderful, benevolent reasons. But is it really what is appear? It's like we always say, Brian, and we all agree on this about the a natural unity, and that's really what we're talking about. We want to promote the truth and the understanding of the dynamics of things, so that what actually forms out of it is a natural unity and growth versus a forced
Yeah,
fall
people
unity.
need the truth so that we can come to an organic consensus. But if we're fed this false reality matrix garbage, then even if we theoretically did come to a consensus, it's based on this false overlay.
Right, because eventually down the line, somewhere it's gonna come out. And
Right.
somebody's gonna start to question and go, what in the world happened? And then you're how many generations down the road? And basically what can be done. So I think, so to me, when we talk about, of course, this being an important time in humanity, what Chris and I often, are all about is a way bigger picture than what most people are normally talking about, kind of, information that needs to get out there so that people can really contemplate it and say, what do we really want? And what are the new souls that are going to come in for experiences, the descendants and different things? What do we want for them? I mean, so as we are handing the baton off, right? What have we done before we hand off the baton? So that information for us, but we really knowing the dynamics, knowing what has been done to groom people, unless we really know that this is pure evil, this really is evil, this is evil intent, this is really as psychopathic as you get, and we'll call that out, right? But in general, there are many, many, many people that it's not black and white like that at all.
Because
And
they don't know. They're still buying tickets to the concert and watching The View.
yeah, and they don't know, and people that have been groomed for certain positions, really the dynamics. I always am, state what happened to you, state your experience. Do not attach a final meaning to it. You then sit back and really start to listen, and then you can make maybe a judgment down the road of what was I really a part of, right? But that's why we always say, right, deny the known and manifest differently. Take the time to explore it. But first things first, you've got to first take down some of those mythos, like what we were saying before, that everything that is higher in frequency is benevolent, that everything, do you see what I
Right.
mean? So you have to tear some of those belief systems that you don't even realize you concreted them in
It's
your
you know what
life.
it is, I've fallen prey to this. It's really at the end of the day wishful thinking.
Yeah. It
We're
is.
like,
Yeah.
oh man, this is so exhausting down here. Gosh, at the higher levels, it's got to be better, right?
It's the whole
And
as
it's
above,
like,
so below thing where,
yeah,
you,
some
but
of it's
yeah.
better, but
Yeah.
then there's a lot of it that's
Not.
even worse
Yeah.
on a magnified level.
But let
Mhm.
me share one quick story before, I know you wanted to channel, but let me tell you one quick story of why,
Mm-hmm.
again, I'm so hopeful about this. And I'm like, it's not what it was. We are able to talk about this. Think people are trying to make it difficult to have these conversations, but we are. Multiple years ago, when we were crossing the country and stopping and visiting people and doing talks or whatever, when we were heading to Arizona, we actually were in Missouri, and someone had put together a group to hear us speak. And where we ended up being was a place that the conditions weren't right for channeling. It just couldn't be done. And Chris was faced, what am I going to do? And he decided, I got to be true to myself. I cannot do this in this environment, right? Well, there was an older gentleman in the audience, and he was in his 80s at that time, and he since has passed from what I understand. But he was there, and he came up after it, and he, told Chris that, he has had in his life similar gifts, has guides or whatever. But he was, it was in the 50s, and he was a professor and did all of this stuff. And he said, at that time, with all the information that I knew, you could not talk and have these conversations.
Oh yeah, no way. In the
You would be
50s.
killed.
I mean,
You
geez, being a
would.
communist was bad enough. You
Yes,
started talking to aliens and stuff. Forget about it.
you're going to be dead in these agendas and stuff like this. So what had happened is that he didn't want to go. He finally decided, I'm done with all this. I'm in my 80s. I don't even want to see this. And he said, it was my guides that forced me, literally harassed me to the point to come hear you talk. And he said, to Chris, he says, I would have pegged you as a fraud, except you knew you could not channel. And this is a horrendous environment. And he said, then I started listening. And then my guides, the point of my guides were, you can talk about some of this now. Because again, he joined some groups and started having conversations that he could not have his entire life.
No.
And he finally could, have some of these conversations. So I say that, I know everybody, we always joke, it's not instant pudding, right? You're feeling the pain, you want it over in the next year, and it's not happening like that. But it is not as horrible as it was. These conversations are,
Oh yeah,
being
absolutely.
able to happen. So,
Absolutely. We're so much further than having to wait till like 3 a.m. or whatever for the Art Bell days.
Oh yeah,
right.
we listened to Art Bell, like I said to you before, when '97, when that famous call came in on Art Bell, we were that one with the panicky person that was actually killed on the other end of it. And you can find that on YouTube now
Yeah,
from
I've heard that. I've
'97,
heard that one.
and the power was out. We were sitting with a little old '50s transistor radio that my grandmother had in the basement. It was still working, and the power was completely out. October snowstorm of '97, which knocked out the power for almost the entire city. It came down so hard and so fast. We were sitting there listening to Art Bell, and that's what we happened to hear. Right, like the very first broadcast I ever hear, I hear that. So it's like of Art Bell. I was hooked after that, listening to Art Bell, and then Coast to Coast for a little while after that. But
Right.
yeah, I thought that was actually quite interesting. But also to talk about something before I go into channel, what you said before about some of the beings that are in some of these other different dimensions using tech. And people have a hard time with this one because they think higher is better. There isn't really a numbered scale. It's just they're all operating at once, just like a lot of different timelines in the multiverse are. And then these could be different versions of us from other universes that happen to look like something ghoulish too. So you have that going on. Then you have these different vibrational scales and different like omniversal, super omniversal areas too that are a gray area, no pun intended. But then it was magnificently shown on Babylon 5. Very great example of like a supposed higher being that had to have some kind of suit or protection. Draco and other areas have to do this too. Where the character of Kosh, he's a Vorlon in the show Babylon 5, and he wears this suit the whole time, this encounter suit, and he's actually energy physical form inside of that suit. No one's ever seen what he actually looked like ever. And so one time where the character Sheridan is falling to his death, Sheridan's a friend of his that they formed a bond over a period of time, and Kosh, the Vorlon, is his guide essentially. And so he acts like a guardian angel. And as he's falling, he opens up his suit and jumps up and grabs him. And Sheridan sees him for what he looks like. He has an elongated skull. He's like this guy in like a Galactic Federation looking like uniform and everything. He floats down to the ground, puts him down, jumps back in his suit. Everyone else saw whatever deity they happened to be worshiping, saw that. They happened to see that. That's why the Vorlons weren't allowed out of their suit, because of the weird entanglement people would have with them from their own biases and religious beliefs, whatever they decoded, encoded. And that happens to be a true effect. Well, Sheridan goes to thank him later on. And he turns back and Kosh looks at him and says, I am sorry. Too many people were looking at me. I now have to rest for a few days. We'll see each other again, that kind of thing. And what he meant was, because he was so open, so transparent, all of those people were focused on him with that worship energy, because they saw their deity, their own home deity, whoever it was, out of their holy book, and they drained him.
Oh,
Uh,
it drained him. Okay, it
they
didn't
drained
feed him,
him.
it drained him.
They drained him,
Right.
and that they were making a point. Worship is more draining, and it damages the being that this happens to be about. And this is why some of the galactics wear suits like that. J. Michael Straczynski was making a point that some galactics wear these suits if they're very energy sensitive, so they don't get entangled with people. They don't form an entanglement type bond with them like that, so they can continue to be more of a guide if they're millions and millions of years old, like the Vorlons. Yeah, and it was that was a very great point that was being made, because some of the Untumbans, for instance, will wear like a samurai type of suit, if you ever see them, because they're the proto-Japanese and Chinese races that formed all the Oriental races on the planet. The Oriental races are their descendant lineage. They're the proto race that actually seeded that genomic structure. They wear that suit. Do other
And
ones?
do they have dragons as well in that culture?
Oh yeah, yeah. There's dragons here. There's dragons there. Oh yeah, they have them.
Right.
And some of them actually are dragons, where they literally will morph like a werewolf, but into a dragon too. I've seen that too, where they literally will change. I found out the Khan lineage was actually that.
That
So
makes a lot of sense.
yeah, the Genghis Khan, Kublai Khan, that was a dragon lineage, like the Dragonborn from Skyrim, or they call it Firebrand DNA, but it's the same thing. So, and werewolves, it's the same thing. There's a branding in the DNA where then you have the werewolf as well. So it's the same thing. Different lineages have that ingrained, or you can become one, like a vampire. So yeah, that's a show all by itself. I mean, the way that dynamic is set up by itself is just enormous. So, but yeah, I was thinking it was going to be the forest people that were going to be speaking this season, because when I was outside with fire I had going earlier, the forest people were saying that they were going to be around. I assumed they meant that we're going to talk, but I know there's a lot around here. Normally I don't chat in the evening because I can't see anybody outside, but it's like, but I can tell there's a lot here. There's members. There's Lanyalosian members here. There's forest people. There's Untumban. As I can see in my head, I can see samurai outfits with the sword and everything. So I uh, yeah, and they're sarcastic as hell if you ever run across them too, in a dry humor sort of way. So
They're very Asiatic humor.
very Asiatic
Like
humor.
like 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 if the boss comes and finds you sleeping at your desk, they don't say, wake your ass up, son, or I'm gonna fire your ass. They say, looks like you could use some vacation time.
Yeah, that's like, yeah, it looks,
Right?
or they'll say something like, "It looks like your honor has been waning today," or something.
Exactly right.
Basically, dumbass, get up, that kind
Yeah.
of, yeah. So, yeah, I've run across that multitudes of times. Okay, which being is actually speaking? There's like 3 or 4 dozen of you here. So,
Whoa.
so there's like, I'm seeing Lanyalosians. There's Indrid Cold present. Let me see. Was Valiant Thor present? Okay. Both Injured Cold and Valiant Thor are there as well. All right. Um, okay, Isaac, which one's talking? Is it going to be whom? Oh, is it you? Of course they're here and you want to speak. You're always here. Okay, let me see. Yeah, I don't think you've met him yet. So let's see. I heard him say he'll be sorry. Okay. He's about probably the most South Park toilet humored Beavis and Butthead person you're gonna run into at the conference. So yeah.
But normally not doing that.
No, not doing that.
Off the record.
Off the record, yes. So yeah, basically a whole episode of South Park would be probably about him. So not yet. Okay. All right. Okay, Isaac. Yeah, I assume it's you, even though the others are all here. Okay. Ooh. You know, you don't have to go so slow. You can commit. Okay. Yes, his assessment of my character is actually correct. But at the conferences, will I exert this particular potty mouth? Maybe, perhaps, depending on what the discussion is. But that is not why I happen to be here. This discussion I know was all over the place with the Galactic Federation rules, along with the conference information, and this is actually one topic because of the fact of the conference, especially where it is situated within Florida at this point in time. Did you not notice the warring centrist between the multiple factions always seem to hit the same generalized area? This is actually an important footnote, you see. Even though Florida naturally would get hit by storms, or not, throughout history, you have ETs and such that would battle over these particular areas. You know why? Because this is a piece of Atlantis. So, Florida is above, also down into the Bermuda Triangle, and further on into the Bermuda Triangle, you have a piece of Atlantis there. The triangle and other areas of the opposite end of the tether or the conduit on the other end in multiple different time frames and universal fragmentaries did happen during the Atlantean Lemurian War. These were the result of their temporal weaponry, you see, on each other. You can thank the Orions for this one, setting that fight up. But the reason that that spot where the Serata sits is so important, can you guess? There is a ley line intersection there that the Bermuda Triangle wants to gently graze it and go further north into North Carolina every now and again and go down further back down to Florida, depending on the time of year. In the time of year of the conference in July, it's just grazing the bottom of that area of Florida. Now, further on into the year where you have hurricane season, there's no such thing, by the way. It's like saying cold and flu season. That is a marketing strategy. Also, it is a co-creative excuse they like to give people so that they can throw storms at each other during that time of year. You see, it's basically their Christmas. So, in this particular notion, let's say, the Serata is actually on a more fluid ley line intersection that actually bobs, like having a bobber on top of the ocean. It moves and flexes slightly. This also gave rise to you figuring out to have the conference there to begin with, you see, because you were being guided by multiple groups to do so. The forest people claim they were the first, because, yes, okay, they were the first to actually come out of the closet there, I suppose, but in more ways than one, because I'm not going to let them contest this one. But they make fun of me on a regular basis. So they came out there. A few other groups did, both bad and good. Military groups realized what was happening there, and you saw what ensued last year with some of the V2K-ing. So, with that said, it is good to have a mix of people there because of the fact that you have multiple parties that have multiple vested interests in such a venue. Even a fledgling venue, especially a fledgling venue, because you have bad ones that want to try to influence, and you have good ones that want to try to influence. So, this is why the forest people wanted to have one of the first says there, because they want to see this succeed. You see, in both an online and offline and physical and non-physical venue, and also in that particular way. So, I can keep babbling on, no pun intended.
Well, I have to ask Isaac, both Arkeem, Ra, and Yemi Janae, we're all sitting together, I think, on one of the last nights of the conference, and they said that they saw like almost like a giant golden portal curtain coming down from the sky, hitting the earth, and then like spreading it across in a line. And I'm almost wondering if they were seeing like this ley line grazing our area.
You're also seeing very much like, say, if you would look up in the night sky and see the stars twinkle, and it's really because of the atmosphere. They were seeing the energies that were blasting the area, not only from non-artificial sources, but artificial sources as well. You see, it's because of the nature of the area. It fluctuates and moves. They were seeing this, the vortices, and so there's more than one vortex there. You see. And the ley line intersection itself, very much like, again, a tornado, like what you were saying before, breaking up into smaller ones, or a hurricane breaking up into smaller tornado type entities. In this, you were seeing some of the AI trying to intersect that, and they were also seeing the natural energies of the area. It used to be a very mystical land back in the times of the Fountain of Youth. This is where they get the stories of Ponce de Leon and the Fountain of Youth, you see, because these were actually bits of technology that were left over from the Lemurian and Atlantean War.
Because there's a Stargate there, right? Near Sarasota, Florida, south of it a bit.
Yes, you are absolutely correct. Some of it is underwater. There's also other technologies off in the ocean, off the shores of Florida on both sides. And Florida, throughout the swampy areas, even the Everglades, has a lot to offer from that period. This is why there is a military base entrenched in the Everglades. If you went further enough in there, you would see soldiers walking around and waiters guarding a small fort. It's actually mostly underground, under the water, there in the Everglades. They hoped people were afraid enough to go into the Everglades because of the alligators and the snakes. Hence, why they let the snakes be planted in there to begin with. Why hire security if you don't have to? You see.
Right.
So they want people to be afraid they're going to be eaten rather than explore the back country. You see. And I can't exactly blame people. I wouldn't want to be eaten by a snake or alligator either.
Right.
But that's the least of their problems. There's mantids and a few gray species wandering around in the back country and the bayous as well, doing their little thing, let's just say, back there. Mostly insectoids, I might add. But there is a major military base within the Everglades that they put most of the propaganda out there about people being eaten alive if they went out in the Everglades in the back areas. So even though that will happen, it's not as scary as you think it is. So this is where I can go into more questions if you like.
Yeah. Boy, in terms of your people, Isaac, are you from Lanilos?
Only half of my genome is. The other half is human. You would say I'm tall, white, and human. You would see me as looking like himself. I'm actually related to himself. I'm 7 feet tall and basically look like a large human.
And are you part of the Galactic Federation?
Well, maybe by the by, there are these little offshoot groups of Valiant Thor and Injured Cold. Technically, you can call them company men, let's just say. But unlike Valiant Thor, like to say he likes to say he does things his way. I tend to do things a little bit of my way. With me and my brother Thorsden, yeah, you can say I'm part of it to a certain extent, but not fully entrenched company men like
Right. Okay, got it. You're not expecting them to throw a huge ceremony and give you a gold watch at the end of so many years, but you're happy to participate until then.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, not necessarily a company man. It's just like that story with the boy that wanted to challenge the giant to a game where the giant said he had 1 foot in one land and one in the other, and the boy took a piece of his homeland, a piece of the giant's homeland, and stood on both the little piles of dirt. That's basically me right there.
Okay,
But you
got
have
it.
to be fair about that conversation because there are folks that have again, in order to play in the sandbox, you have to have some sort of association with the Galactic
Right.
Federation.
Association, but yes,
Yeah.
not like
Okay,
uniform wearing.
To get credentials. Otherwise, you don't have any
Right, and then-
credentials that are near.
And even Valiant Thor would say there's a difference between an associate and a full-blown, I'm like 100% with whatever you
Right.
say.
An official or agent.
So, they, again, so it's even, they'll say that we're on a crash course to have some sort of affiliation with them, but how much of one is really, going to be the big question. And, do you know all the secret handshakes? Are you at that level? Or are you just kind of this loose association get with it what you can and then kind of still do your own thing.
I make fun of the people that do the secret handshakes, actually, because like Valiant Thor and Cold, they will say they don't do the handshake thing, but they kind of do. Where do you think some of the Masonic groups, the good portions of them anyway, get some of the procedural things from, with the secret handshakes and the doors and the back closets and things of that nature? The GF and some of the other offshoots actually came up with some of those procedures. I kid, and Valiant Thor's rolling his eyes at the moment. Cold could give a shit. So it's the Valiant Thor knows he's being made fun of. I kid, it's not necessarily just the secret handshake. It's more of a live long and prosper type of deal. But you get the idea.
Right. Those signals and gestures.
Mhm.
Well then, uh, Isaac, in terms of our timeline for achieving full disclosure and getting humanity on our way to somehow joining the Galactic Federation officially, can you give us any, if not timeline, like dates, any sequence of events?
You actually do not want to really join the Galactic Federation or have Earth join it. It is more or less Earth becoming who Earth is supposed to be as a society.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense because the more I'm learning of the Galactic Federation, it doesn't sound like we necessarily have to join it, but it's more like what's it going to take then for Earth to become at least a level one civilization?
The level one civilization is not a rushed unity, it is an organic unity. What you're seeing now is a forced inclusivity taking place. Your DEI hires, let's just say,
Yep.
because of a faction of the GF, you see, that also believes in this. There's some races that feel that you have to insert certain races in certain areas and test to the point where you want to bludgeon them to death with a sledgehammer. So, with that said, I ignored that portion. But with that said, Earth needs to form its own little federation while you still have your nation states intact, doing what they want to do on their own sovereign territory. They just agree to disagree, you see.
Right. Instead of some new world order where we dissolve sovereignty, we need to have each nation have its own lawful sovereignty, but then come to a consensus through whatever governmental body.
Yes, and even keep its own currency where you can then translate it into galactic standard to be able to trade. You see, that is the proper way to do it, not the Martian German way of the master race taking over the entire planet, you see. So they've tried this once before in ancient Rome where they tried to convert everybody to Christianity. Now they tried it with the new world religion of the New Age. And then they tried to infiltrate the UFO communities, et cetera, et cetera. It is starting to break apart in that area to where everybody's forming their own consensus, and rightfully so. So there are some things working. This is why your conference, being more genuine in this area, is actually very badly needed at this point in time. This is why you were guided to create this to begin with.
And again, it
Yep.
doesn't mean you can't have agreements.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Trade deals and
with
the like,
trade
yeah.
deals or this, that, and the other. But what, again, that whole carrot and a stick of, joining it. What, again, we're the square world now and we can't fit as we are into that
Yeah,
round hole
exactly.
anymore. And so,
Right. So could we even join if we wanted to at this point?
No.
Right.
Close, but no cigar in this particular way. Now, like I
But
said,
we don't. And listening to what you two or three have to say, we don't want to join. No, thank you.
no, and also I hate to break this party up, but there is another party that wishes to speak at this point in time. So I will step aside.
Cheers, Isaac.
Let's see. Where are you exactly? Ah, yes. Which one of you two? Haha, yes. It is now going to switch over to Injured Cold. Yes, you call me Cold, or I am the one known as Cold. But am I that in emotions? No. No, this happens to be my name. Unlike Valiant Thor, that is not his name. He is like the doctor from Doctor Who, of whom they called him that from, whereas he is not giving his real name, but his rank. So, that is not actually his name. So that is more of a Galactic Federation ranking, as he's valiant as Thor was, that kind of thing. Me, I'm just Indrid. So, uh, this is where I come in to talk about being a searcher. Searching, this may seem like haves and have nots, and he seems to think this is an unfair advantage for certain bloodlines. And I wish to say that there are some loopholes within the legislation that we have found to come in and search for maybe souls, people, and bloodlines that we interacted with in the past. Lanulos likes to find loopholes, you see. Little precedents in the laws, very much like your Brotherhood of Steel does in your Fallout New Vegas, where you try to find a loophole to depose one of their leaders within their own laws. This is what I doing it my way, unlike Valiant Thor, who does things his way by influencing different cultures on Earth, such as academia, politics, religion, the private sector, and the like. I do it by searching for those that we have already found in the past, you see, and finding those people to then be able to bear the story of which I wished people to remember from their own histories. Woodrow Derenberger, for instance, had that within his family, and his daughter still carries this torch to this day, you see. Whereas continues to write about myself, not that I'm vain like this, you see. I am just trying to find any loophole in the bureaucracy that I can use to be able to bring about a unity or bring about at least a starting point to where it's the first gunfire at the race kind of thing. To then other races can be inspired to find loopholes, manipulate that system a little bit, just like you can manipulate your business system a little bit to be able to get around some of the bureaucracy you have here on Earth. You see, and so or on Midgard, as it were.
So are you saying, injured, that because perhaps like you're a Lenosian and you have perhaps certain bloodline that allows you to kind of take on a almost a free agent status without getting in trouble with the authorities, as it were. And then if enough people, enough beings do likewise, then you can have them be part of helping the organic shift down here on Earth.
That's exactly it. They called me a searcher, you see, searching for opportunities to be able to implement dialogue again with people, even on a soul level and also a lineage level that we once had dialogues with before, let's just say, the Iron Curtain dropped. Not the little Iron Curtain, but there was another one that had to do with all the galactics having to withdraw to, let's say, a safe distance or not interfere past a certain point. From the Mayan and Aztec perspective, it looked like their gods had disappeared, where we really didn't go anywhere, kind of thing. But this is exactly what took place. So I'm trying to find any ancient legislation I can. Ancient.
Well, am I linked to any of these? Do I get to fall and fit in any of these loopholes threads, sir?
Actually, with your father saying like what was said in a previous episode by Steve, I believe his name was. So yes, there are some loopholes in there, but some records were actually lost out there in some of the libraries during the last war conflicts and some of the last skirmishes. So we are attempting to piece together. So say if you lost some of your files off your computer, but you had a backup somewhere else. But that backup was right smack dab in the middle of contested territory now. What would you do? You'd search for it and find a nondescript way or a nonchalant way of doing so. Also, some of your ancient gods would send, like your Hercules, for instance, out to gather objects, people, and get some experiments and creatures under control. That's the nasty side of it. I'm talking about, say, some records were lost, like in your Blade Runner 2049, where they said they had a burn that took out a bunch of records. That actually happened to us out in the galaxy, and we're having to do a data recovery, let's say. And then on Earth, we found a lot of the missing pieces, a lot of the missing records from the old times. It's like in your movie Man of Steel, where you saw those
The
of
crystal
Krypton
shard.
had been on Earth before, and then the war took them away from there. It's the same thing, you see. So Therefore, yes, your family does fall under that, but does not mean that we would be able to just all of a sudden, wham, be there and show you Lonulus. It
So,
doesn't
so
work.
you, and you can't just like grant me a craft to like fly around and say, "Hey, everybody, this is real. It's real. Hey, check me
We would
out."
absolutely love to do these things. There are complaints
Okay.
about this loudly and often, but we only partially kid. We say loudly and partially often. But at the same time, we understand the grievance because we wish this as well. We hate legislation. He calls me a company man. Isaac calls me a company man, and me and Valiant Thor company man. I suppose you can say that, but within those bounds of those rules, then we can form a bridge to the colony that was lost to us so long ago, and then find a way to help Earth forge its own path and its own destiny, you see.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, is there anything, I mean, I'm throwing the conferences, anything that else I could do or any way that we could combine our efforts without violating any of the rules? Because I understand the need to abide by rules. If you're not a company man, then they might kick you off of the scene.
Yeah, exactly. Isaac, on the other hand, he says he's not a company man per se. He just doesn't wear the uniform, you see. He's more of a jeans and t-shirt type.
He's plain clothes,
He's
plain
plain
clothes.
clothes. I'm more or less the formal dress uniform. That is, if I wore clothes. You see, I would.
Okay,
That is what the birthday suit is my dress uniform. You see,
right.
my people are traditional that way. At least most of them. So we would shock you greatly if we showed up at your conference. You would think it was a nudist colony, which is where some humans got the idea from, by the way. But it sprang into a different religion, a religious base after a while that created two factions, one good, one malignant. That was the Orion's fault at that point. But at the conference, what you can do is just do as you keep on doing and keep doing it well by always tweaking, reorganizing, and stay in the same spot. It's a PowerPoint. So stay there. You will draw in the attention as long as you stay true within true benevolence and no conflicting agendas. You will draw these groups to you that need to be there, and you will minimize, I say minimize, the amount of the negativity that an eye, he calls it lovingly the eye of Sauron, that is gazing upon that area. Why do you think also that hurricane kept hitting that same spot? The PowerPoint, but also hoping to discourage people from going to that part of Florida at any time of year, you see. It wasn't just about your conference, it was about the PowerPoint, but the conference happens to be within it, you see.
Did they try to hit our conference in any way this last July or
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know
Yes, they did. Yes, they did with V2K mostly, and nightmarish dreams, electrical issues, things of that nature. That you experienced the electrical issue. They stayed a day later, and all the power of the grid area went out. You see, so this was a military group that was doing a lot of this.
were they
But
trying to hit us during the conference and they got forestalled towards the end? Is that what happened? Like if
yes,
they
there
had
were
their
too
way,
many.
it would have happened in the middle or beginning of a conference to keep people even from getting there.
Yes, exactly. They were preventing people from getting there. They were preventing people from some equipment malfunctions, but we delayed them long enough to where they caused their temper tantrum after people had left. You see.
Yeah.
And we call it a temper tantrum because we know 3-year-olds that have better manners than these particular factions do. And these are human factions, by the way. These were military, malignant, arrogant little toads, essentially. So, one of a multitude of them. But these are more like shock troopers that decided to cut the power and then tried to look in the different rooms to see if there was anybody left from the conference because they were held back for too long, but not only through legislation, but energetic perceptional confusion, you see. That's what some of our people are good at. And also Fuma and Seymour, the forest people, do these things as well. So do dogmen. And various other races as well. They will cause some of this perceptional filter illusions, very much like in your Doctor Who, where he shows Martha this key wears around his neck and shows this perceptional filter what it looked like, where you go, it looked like a ghost. This is essentially what we were doing to them, just going boogie boogie until after everybody was gone. We didn't exactly attacked them directly, that would have been in violation. So what we did was we just put up little perceptional filters, the same as if somebody was, say, trying to get through a hallway and you just dumped a whole barrel of Legos through and you had nothing but bare feet. That's essentially what we did today.
That's effective. Caltrops.
Yes, exactly. It was the same thing, and it pissed them off until the day after the conference, and they just basically lost their shit, pretty much. So that's essentially what it boiled down to.
Now, in terms of um, gains that we made for this conference, are there any gains that you can speak to that we made that we don't necessarily know of down here at this level? But like Audrey Walters, for example, she was saying that there were certain groups that were in their craft getting to meet above our conference and engage in trade and negotiations, and that in itself was very beneficial.
Yes, that indeed happened. There's a lot of space traders that around that you will see will begin to frequent conferences like that. And this did happen, by the way. You had a few that were perusing the wares and perusing around the site, even though it's a fledgling conference. And he likes to say in his Strange New World Star Trek program, it was depicted properly of an alien trader owning a thrift shop in Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. That was actually 110% accurate as to how some of our people operate, or galactic, I will say, more generally speaking. Yes, there were trade deals going on. There were discussions going on between different races, above, below, and all sides. To what's going on. This is also why the forest people wanted to be part of that. They normally aren't engaging in conferences that aren't with their name only on them. You normally see Sasquatch-related conferences. They are usually present energetically and frequency-wise at those. They usually prefer their own thing. At this one, they decided to basically come out of the closet. So, for this particular event, this shows the genuinity of it because they generally don't do that for galactic conferences. They do that for their own kind.
Wow, it's an honor. Thank you.
So they wanted me to say this. They were going to speak initially, but they hung back when they saw how many other people were present. They will in a future show in here in the not too distant future. But did you have further questions?
I'll go one last one. The Farsight Institute and I think Elizabeth April, maybe others, they've spoken to things very rapidly escalating in the next like 6 months, hitting this election in the next 6 months towards disclosure and a lot of big events as opposed to other beings or groups and saying, oh no, it's going to take more years for all of this to play out. Can you give us any perspective on that?
Depends on the timeline, you see. You shift timelines all the time, you see, within your dimensional Midgardian frequency, you see. It's guarding the middle ground, meaning it's like the Yargzadrill tree where you can jump to different timelines depending on which frequency you happen to be on the side of the bed you wake up in the morning. Sometimes it's not quite that anal, I actually kid. It is actually more or less more of a catharsis that has to take place first for that to happen. It's not that frequent. But it actually will take a number of years for some of this red tape to iron out. But what you are also seeing are some of the initial stages of this, like with your conference and others like this, to whereas certain venues are starting to be seated in different places to have these different meetings on the ground level versus on the governmental level, you see.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's okay. That makes a lot of sense. It's going to take a while for the organic growth to really kick in, but the meantime, changes are happening. I'm hoping, I guess one last question, I take that back. Is there an Earth Alliance where there are military white hats here on the Earth level who are working with, say, the Galactic Federation without violating the Prime Directive to help counter the service to self forces?
No, it's not quite that black and white, unfortunately. The Force people have spoken about this recently on their own program. It is up to humans on your level to recognize these things, and actually, once you become cognizant of these things happening, it becomes to drastically build that energy dynamic you see, and you become that Earth Alliance. Is there a cohesive alliance? No. Are there white hats doing similar things in little pockets? Yes, that is the distinction right there.
Okay, so it's kind of almost like an Earth coalition that's waiting to become an alliance, and it's up to us to basically formulate what that's going to be.
Yes, is up to humans. Yes, yes.
So there's one thing I do want to bring up. It's more of defining things because, words can be limiting and people have many definitions for the same words.
Right.
So I want to do a clarification on words.
Hmm.
When we discuss the difference between an organic unity versus a forced unity.
Mhm.
So even in the disclosure movement, you have almost two camps that are promoting an agenda, and some of it can be an organic unity, but some of it is a part of what we consider anything where there's deception to try to promote a certain agenda without you having all the information in our mind is a forced type of unity, okay? Where they're trying to drive you to believe certain things.
Yes.
So even within the disclosure movement, even in different conferences, I hate to say it, but not all conferences are organic unity based.
Right.
The one thing that
Some are propaganda based.
Right. We see they have shills and sponsors to insert messaging, even though there's truth in there, they also insert things that
Right.
flies in the
And-
ointment.
And so to me, that's one of the biggest things to try to, I guess, disclose right now is to help people understand again. And we're not in the business of talking about people because we know the complications of how they became who they are. We're not about that. But what we actually want people to know, and I don't know if you have any other comment on this, is the fact that when we say organic unity is not just talking about this. It's allowing for the totality of the information that is known to come out without an agenda to allow people to form what they want versus, an agenda.
The
that's
unvarnished
talk about
truth.
Things, right. That is
We
going to try.
want the unvarnished truth to have true organic development versus
Right.
a
Yeah.
mockingbird.
Right.
Yes, and as Elena once said, 50% of this is recognition, 25% of this is acting on this, acting on all of this, and the remaining 25% is coming to a resolution stage about this. So yes, this is you're in the recognition stage, the 50%
Yeah.
the way there.
Yeah. Okay, we're getting there. 50% is good. I'll take that. It's better than 25.
Yes.
And it's going to be a struggle because I think, in reality, again, understanding that all these dynamics exist, you know what I mean? It's hard to have a conference that isn't free of some of it. So, the goal is to do the
Difficult.
best. Right. It's very difficult to not allow, maybe folks in that maybe unknowingly know that they may be bringing information that isn't quite 100%. But the goal is as we grow with our discernment, we still can pick through it all. And so, and allow that organic unity to grow. And
Or if they're on stage and they throw out like a red herring, we had now the discernment to call them out on it. And maybe now we get their audience won over to ours, and we even unmask that deception.
Yes, and this is actually, you'll find that you'll do this naturally. It's not like it's a job per se. It's more like you're doing this organically and naturally as you go along. You're going to root out these red herrings as you go along. The more genuine the conference, more genuine the intentions, the more genuine and organicness that you're rooting out the red herrings. It's not like you're doing police work or fire work or EMT type work or ghost busting work or anything like that. You're actually just organically unifying, and therefore the red herring becomes the elephant in the room. You see, so this is how that change is born. Or like in your Star Trek Picard, where he says to young Guinan, Picard goes, "Change does not always come in the time we think that it should." And this is actually a very important thing to understand. Not think that we should, but when it is meant to, meaning when the conversation is organic, no matter what the people believe about each other, politically, religiously, or anything like that. When you are at that state where you're having a comfortable, or at least a peaceful conversation with members of your own society, this is when you will really start to see that pick up in the end from our end. Now, at the conferences, you're already beginning to see this because you have people around you at even your conference, Brian, that don't agree on every single point. You see, but yet here they are in the same room with one another.
And they came much further along from where they started to then after by the end of the conference, there definitely was a lot more um, amelioration in
Yes.
a true sense.
Yes, and this is a clue, Sherlock, because that shows the genuineness of the conference platform and the template that is being formed. You are literally writing this particular constitution, as it were, as you go along. Eventually, I would actually make a little bit of a suggestion, making maybe a set of tenets or a set of not commandments, Isaac. We're not doing
Principles.
principles. Yes,
Lay out
I
the
would suggest
principles.
lay out the principles of the conference and make it stick. This
That's
will
good. I like that.
show
Yeah.
stamped in place. You put your sword in the ground and it will stick and it will stand the test of time while everything kind of withers around it. That's what you want.
Excellent. I thank you for the suggestion, Injured. I appreciate it, sir.
Yes, we made this. I mean, Valiant did the suggestion to him and Bjorn and yourself for the new GIC. So,
Oh, and I want to say hello to Valiant Thor, my behalf and Craig Campobasso and crew.
yes, he will speak to you soon enough on hang on, Valiant, did you wish to make a comment before? No, we're fine. Okay.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure he did not. But yes, he will eventually make further comments on further shows. He's usually a man of few words, even though he tends to babble on for quite some time when he gets into channel mode. And he knows I'm making fun of him and he's walking away now. So, with
I'm a Doctor Who fan, so it's okay.
yes, he is essentially the Doctor. You see, a fun little fact, Frank Strange's actually had the nickname the Doctor, and Valiant is the face changer. You see, many people think
Like the Master.
The Master, yeah, that too. He's like, ha ha, that was actually a joke. But in this particular way, well, both actually, in this particular way, people thought the original photo was him and the other person that you saw the circle around him was the bodyguard, when in
Right.
fact they were the same person. He just changes his face often, you say. Therefore, you really don't know what he originally looks like.
Right.
So that's how he's able to conduct his business so readily. He could be black, white, red, male, female, you don't know. It's not, no, Isaac, he is not gender fluid. Thank you. That said, before he goes into some more of the lewd jokes, I will cut this conduit here. So he can do this on his own time. So it was your time. I know, I understand. Was. But, okay. Thank you for having me on this evening. Conduit closing. Thank you. He's a jokester too, but he has dry humor. He's like the Christopher Walken of the group. So,
That's awesome.
that's how Cold is. You know, he has dry humor. He goes, Isaac goes, get it, cold, dry, get it. Okay. But okay. But that was actually excellent. I like that. Does anyone have any final words for this before we close
I
this?
think, I hope this was, very enlightening for people, a lot of different conversation. And it's hard because you can start going on this and you can go for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours because it's just never ending. But again, like I said, from our perspective, we believe so much of the importance of the galactic history side and how it applies to our daily lives to bring that part of the conversation into the disclosure community so that it helps people gain a better perspective. So
Yeah, galactic history is definitely then it blows through all the matrix distortions of like religion and we came from monkeys and the dinosaurs were killed by a big ball from the sky in one day or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a load of bullcrap. They said, however, the big ball from the sky was directed by other ETs, so he didn't get eaten by the big things with teeth down here.
Right. They did do the big ball from the sky to clear the surface of the dominant predators.
The predator species, yeah.
Okay.
They tried once before to colonize, and they kept getting killed, and injured. So they figured throw a big rock down on them, and then they'll come in afterwards. And that's what they did to mine resources, and then they decided to colonize. So yeah, the movie 65 does that. That depicts that very well, showing the human-like people outside the Earth, and eventually it was colonized. So that it depicted it quite well.
Oh, really? So Adam Driver and that was like pretty
That was pretty
pretty
accurate. Yeah. The only thing
And
that,
accurate that he didn't really know where he was, because it was really in that formation stage and the decide to, hey, let's colonize this area. It really was like that.
So it's like a frontier. It's like the wild, wild west, and you might get eaten by a Tyrannosaurus Rex, maybe, and
mhm,
quite possibly
yeah.
in that scenario.
But
Yeah.
that humans, because people think again, I call it the human skin suit. This design was new to us here, and it wasn't. It is old, 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 old. You know what I mean? Now, was there tampering done? Yes. But I mean genetic tampering, but God knows there's genetic tampering now. But
Everywhere, yeah.
it's a great depiction to try to give people perspective a little bit of what was going on before all of this development here started.
Mhm. They
Right.
even
When we
show
were
at the
still
end
at
the cities.
Jurassic Park.
Yeah, yeah. They even show at the end where the Earth is burning, and then they jump ahead to where cities are on Earth. So somebody was making a statement there about definitely about that. Joanna, do you have anything? So we'll close
No,
the circle.
no,
Up.
I'm
Brian?
great. If
Yeah,
you're great.
yeah. Uh,
I'm happy with all the content. I just very much look forward to coming back, and uh, I mean, it was very much a treat to get to not only get to meet Isaac formally, but then also speak with Indrid Cold, and then have Valiant Thor chime in, and that also shows you how tight a galactic community we have down here.
most definitely, yeah. Valiant Thor, I will tell you the secret. My mother actually physically met him so a long time ago, and it's the second figure, the one with the red circle around his head. That's the version of him she knew. In a suburb of Chicago at a bar when she was 21, he looked like a mob goomba, pretty much dressed like.
Yeah, like with like dark curly hair in a zoot
Yeah.
suit. Okay,
And he looked like that other figure, what people think is the bodyguard. That's what he looked like.
right.
And that's how she knew him anyway. Was at that face. So he
It's not
traded.
very much like a Star Trek episode.
Yeah, that I would write that into a Star Trek episode with whatever series they had going. I would write that in there as a flashback or something because I think that'd be great. Yes, I know Valiant. Yes, I understand. Okay, I don't know why they're timing me for whatever reason, but
Okay.
okay. Yeah, closing the circle. Usually when they say that, they want the circle closed. So
Right.
so thank you everybody. Thank you for everybody for watching this episode with Brian Tseng, the Solar Bee. We hope to have him on very soon again after this to keep plugging that awesome conference, very genuine conference in July at the Serata. Again, hopefully you can be there. Go to his website. Why don't you say the website, Brian, before we
Yeah.
close?
Fulldisclosuremovement.org, all one word. We got highlights and the live stream recording from this year's 2024 conference. And then we've got Super Soldier early bird tickets for singles and couples already on sale. And the Serata, as they're cleaning up in the aftermath of these two storms, we have a conference discount that's available. Just let them know at the Serata that you're with the 2025 Full Disclosure Now conference.
All right, thank you, Brian, and thank you everybody for watching this very good episode, very unique episode of The Lifting. So this is where I now officially close the circle within true benevolence and no conflicting agendas at this moment in time. So thank you, everybody. Bye-bye now.